especially here in Arkansas, where education is not quite as high, and it's not saying that people are stupid, but they've not learned these things as well. Argument means disagreement, usually heated with a lot of yelling and cussing. What I mean, and other people that talk about arguments like Pascal's wager are talking about, is something different. An argument in that case is a set of statements that you have in support of a proposition that you are, or a belief that you are putting forward. Baptists, but you get them all in a room and they're all going to disagree on just about every piece of theology. That's the reason that there are 200 plus denominations. If they all believe the exact same thing, it would still be the one holy Catholic Church before the first church split in 1064, when the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church parted ways and excommunicated each other. So that being said, just alone there's 200 and some odd to one that your argument that the God that you're the way to worship God that you have is correct. Now you add in that there's over 10,000 religions in the world. Each one of them has a different view of God. The Islamic idea of Allah is a little bit different from the Christian view of God, which they're the same God, but they have a different name and a little bit different attributes. That's different from how the Jews view God. The Jews and Muslims would call Christianity a pagan, a polytheistic religion because of the Trinity. Yes, the Christians say that it's three in one. It's three beings, sharing one substance, etc., very complicated, convoluted. But to them, it says that that's polytheism. That's worshiping more than one God. Both of those two say that that's wrong. The Christians are going to hell. You've got Buddhists. The Buddhists have a different way of thinking than the Hindus and the Christians and the Muslims and the Muslims and the Jewish and others, and on down the line. Now you've got all of these 10,000 different faiths. And when you think about it, to the person that's a non-believer, they're looking at you and saying, okay, so basically my ideas are, I've got 9,999 to 1 that you're correct. So the odds are not very good in your favor if I'm going by logic. Because remember, if you're talking to a quote-unquote non-believer, someone like me, I'm looking at this from a logical, rational standpoint and saying, well, there's a pretty good chance that you're wrong and one of these other guys is just as right. And when you look at it from that standpoint, then the person making the claim actually has just as much to lose as the person that doesn't believe at all, possibly more. Going by the Homer Simpson argument that, well, what if we're worshiping the wrong God or we're worshiping the wrong way? Think about it. Every time that you go to pray, even if you're praying to the right God and you're praying the wrong way and you're supposed to be facing east to Mecca, or you're supposed to be obeying the actual Sabbath, which starts at sundown on Friday, you're in trouble. That you're pissing God off, and he's getting madder and madder at you. Now, there's a whole lot of eschatology behind this and whole epistemology behind this that talks about faith and works and everything, and that's fine. But to the non-believer, your argument doesn't make sense because there is just as much of a chance that you're wrong as he is. And he's just simply, the non-believer is just simply choosing to live their life as if there's nothing. Because that's a safe bet. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, well, then I'm screwed. Yeah, true. But so are you if you're wrong. So that's the first reason that I think Pascal's wager is bad. The second reason that I can go into is think about the kind of a relationship that Pascal's wager kind of denotes here. This is not something that is from the loving God that Christians like to talk about as having a relationship with God. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so kind of thing. It's not, because let me change some of the words here. Let me change it and move it from the idea of God, and let's bring it down to something a little bit more earthly. My husband loves me. He loves me so much, and he only hits me because I've done something wrong. I can't do anything without my husband because he is my light and my life, and everything that I do everything that I have is because of him. I have to hold on to him. I have to dote on him, and if I don't love him enough, he will punish me. But I will deserve it because I am a bad person, and he only punishes me because he loves me. This is the mantra of an abused spouse. This is the kind of a relationship that Pascal's wager is hinting at. It is not a relationship of love. It is a relationship of abuse, of the abuser, of the abused to the abuser. This whole idea of love me or else, that's not something that I could personally even begin to hope to want to bow down before and worship and love. No. That is an abusive husband. That is an abusive father. That is not anything that I want to call a God, much less have dictate what I should do with my life. No thank you. Second argument, that's the second reason why Pascal's wager is a bad argument. Now the third reason, let's look at Pascal's wager from another point of view. Now we talked about the whole what if you're wrong. We talked about how the abusive side of it, but think about it from a third direction here. And I just blanked. And it's the idea that you can force yourself to believe something if you try hard enough. This whole love me or else kind of routine, it gives the idea that you have control over what you believe. Now, it's true that with humankind, we have two basic ways of gathering of making decisions. The first kind, which is type 1, comes from back in the plains. If we hear a rustle in the bushes, we think it's a predator. Type 2 is the kind of, if we hear a rustle in the bushes, it might be a predator, but let's investigate a little bit more. Let's gather more data. Now, if you're out in the African plain and and there's the possibility that it's a hungry lion out there, which type of thinking do you think is going to have you survive? The kind where you get more false negatives and it's actually you run or you react like it's a predator but it's not? Or the kind where you always react like it's possibly not a predator and it turns out to be one? From a natural selection standpoint, nature is going to push us towards making the first decision, making the first instance first, going for type 1 first, where we make the assumption, and then if it's safe, we go back and look for the evidence. So we're already geared to that. While we have the capability to reason and to use logic and to think things through, that's not our first step in what we do. We have established our beliefs, then we go back and look for evidence to support our beliefs. And think about this too, and this is something that I'm borrowing from J.T. Eberhard, who's got a beautiful blog. It's called What Would JT Do on Pathos. Great thing, great blog, check it out. But he puts it this way. If you and I were to go and stand up on top of a tall building and look down, no matter how much we try to convince ourselves, we're not going to believe that if we step off of this building, we will float to the ground magically and be unharmed. If you are a sane and rational person, you're not going to be able to convince yourself that stepping off that building is not going to mean you're dead when you hit the ground, that you're going to fall to the ground, splat, and die. Beliefs are like that. They're based on the information that we have around us. Even faith, even when we talk about faith is, in one sense, some people call it credulity, believing something even in spite of the evidence. I think of it more along the lines of, I like how Peter Prigozhin puts it, claiming to know something you don't know, or thinking you know something when you don't really know. And I lay this out as a challenge. When you look at someone that's coming close to death, or that's had to come close to death, if you've ever done this yourself when you were a believer, at what point did you not have that sudden thought of, what if I'm wrong? Or that sudden thought of, did I pray enough? Am I really saved? I can think of times when I would sit in bed as a kid and wonder about that. Yes, I sat and I prayed and I said the prayer and I believe it, But do I? There's always that doubt. And if you have to have 100% faith in order to be saved, there's even that little bit of doubt, you're screwed. You cannot force yourself to believe something. You can go through the motions, and sure, I could. I could make my family just absolutely ecstatic and say, you know what, I'm giving this whole atheist thing up. I believe I'm 100% now. I could go and pretend to speak it, and believe me, I could pretend to speak in tongues now. I've done it. But all of that pretending in the world is not going to, it's a Baptist saying, fake it till you make it. All of the faking in the world, if I've got the information that I do, I can't ignore that. My beliefs are not going to change because I'm trying to push some of this information away. I can't unlearn the things that I've learned. Belief is not something that you choose. Hell, I didn't choose to stop believing in God when it happened. It was just at one point, as I said, okay, well, let's walk through this logically, just like I did with every other step through, and I had slowly peeled away layers until I finally got to that last point of God. And it hit me like a ton of bricks right then. I didn't want to believe. I didn't want to not believe anymore. And when it hit me, I was devastated. I was so depressed, and it was like I had lost my best friend or a family member. It was that kind of a sorrow for me. I was not ready for it. I didn't want it. And now that I've come to that, I can't turn back. I cannot force myself to believe again, knowing what I know. And so that's the third way that Pascal's wager fails, because it says that belief is something you choose to do. And I don't think that's the case. So right there, off the top of my head, there are 3 very good arguments against Pascal's wager. And as I told my family members and their friends on that post, I'm not telling you this to make you question your own beliefs. You want to believe in God, you want to believe in Jesus and speak in tongues and lay hands and olive oil stuff, fine. As long as it's what floats your boat, fine. But if you're going to present arguments for why someone else should believe, or why your beliefs are justified, make them good arguments. Pascal's wager is not a good argument. It is one of the worst arguments that you can use in defense of your faith, because it is so easy to tear apart. And that's all that I meant when I posted that, was that if you're going to do it, come up with a better argument. Think it through. If you're going to have reason for believing something, make them good reasons. If you're going to have arguments that support why you believe, make them good arguments. Put some thought into it. Don't just parrot what you think other people want, or what your pastor has told you, or what you think you've read in the Bible. There were some people, of course, that started talking about following the Bible, and that's a whole other argument that we can get into in another time. But Pascal's wager? No, not a good argument. And with that, I'm going to take a quick little break to get just a little something to drink, and we will come back in just a bit to talk about the raspberry wheat ale.
Hi, my name's Callie.
And I'm Ari.
If you're like most of us, you're very concerned about the gay agenda's plans for world domination.
Are you tired of seeing glitter all over every damn thing?
Do you hate rainbows as much as any other red-blooded American?
Then we have the answer for all your baseless fears and unjustified paranoia.
Presented exclusively on Secular Media Network, the Gaytheist Manifesto is your source for news, commentary, discussion,